Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. Okay. Okay, now it's recording. Oh, good. So, how about we start by you introducing yourself and what is your relation to interculturality or cross-cultural living or having contact with different cultures?
So my name is Maria, and I'm from Poland, but I've been living in the UK for quite a few years now. I moved here back in 2007, which doesn't quite feel real, but I guess it is. And I was able to travel a little bit lately, like in the last 2 years. So I've also had the wonderful opportunity to meet lots of people from all over and meet lots of different cultures on my way.
Okay.
So,
Okay, very good. And since you mentioned traveling, where have you traveled so far?
so I've mostly traveled in Southeastern Europe and just Europe in general. I haven't been anywhere outside of Europe yet, but I'd love to. As soon as I can, I'll be traveling out of Europe as well to explore
Okay.
some more. But yeah, Southeastern Europe mostly.
Okay, perfect. And what did you learn about your own culture traveling through Southeastern Europe?
Well, I think there's a couple of different things that are kind of contradictory a little bit. But the first thing was, I guess, realizing that coming from Poland, it took some kind of internal work to just throw myself into like the uncertainty of traveling across these regions, because there's so many things you just can't take for granted, and the concept of time and it's just completely different, and life has a completely different rhythm there and a very different speed. So I think I realized that, well, one thing, coming from Poland, I kind of expected things to be, and also having lived in the UK for so many years, which is, very much kind of organized and stuff. I've come to just like expect that things are a certain way, like things are on time and things are kind of organized and orderly and stuff.
Yeah.
But then I realized that, and that threw me at first a little bit, because I was embracing the experience, but it was sometimes a little bit kind of like I had to really like calm myself and like, okay, the bus is gonna come when it's gonna come. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
So that was like the initial thing that I learned about myself, I guess, and like my my culture coming from Poland. But then also there was the other thing where I slowly really started to embrace it, and I realized that, well, I love it. I love the fact that nobody is really in a hurry, and that everybody just kind of takes time to gather over coffee and like just be with just take time over conversations with people and friends, just having a good time. And I realized that that's a part of me as well, and of my like Slavic background, I guess. And I realized that I think it's quite, yeah, that's definitely one thing that like people from Poland have in common with like people in the Balkans, for example, that we just love a good time, and like we enjoy coming together and socializing, even if it takes hours. So it was funny to have the two experiences, that I think deep down we are like this, but it's just like the daily life makes you like need to always be in a hurry, but it's not necessarily like the way we'd want have to have things run. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. Actually, it makes a lot of sense. Yes.
I'm glad.
So something that I think is also quite important, and it happens a lot when you experience different cultures, is culture shock. So what is your definition of a culture shock?
uh, I guess my definition of a culture shock is like a barrier in understanding. Like I might, see things and know why they happen in theory, but I kind of don't. I don't really don't really get the thinking behind it, for example. So one thing that's maybe a very simple example, and it's not quite a deep one, but something that to me stands for culture shock very well was when I first traveled to Bulgaria, actually, and I knew that, you know, there's a different code for like shaking your head and nodding, like I knew that there's something different that people do over there, and it doesn't quite mean the same thing. But still, when I first encountered someone shaking their head meaning yes, I was lost. I had no idea what's going on. And I just thought, at the beginning, everybody's just being super rude. Like, I'm asking a bus driver if I can get on the bus, and he's like, and in the beginning, I just thought, why is everybody saying no to me? And then, you know, it sank in eventually. Okay, no. This is the thing. This is that they're saying, like, they're actually being like polite and agreeing with me a lot of the time. I just take it for, you know, to mean something completely different. And that was strange. That to me was a very kind of tangible example of culture shock, because even when I didn't have enough time really in Bulgaria to fully get used to it. So up until the very end of my stay there, I still, you know, it always threw me, and I always had to kind of stay on my toes to see what people really meant, especially because then I realized that when people pick up on the fact that I'm a tourist, they started to like do the nod for yes and shake for no, and then I no longer knew anything. So that was very funny. But that to me was like a mini culture shock, where I know there's a different convention. I know it's something that I need to learn to understand, and yet it's just difficult, and it takes time to adjust to. So yeah. It was very funny. It led to some funny situations, I tell you.
Yeah. Okay. That's a very interesting, like, the definition of culture shock, and I think it's quite like when you realize the differences between you and the other culture, like you realize, as you said, the barriers between you and the other cultures. Which brings us to the following question: like, have you ever had a conflict with someone that later on realized that conflict was cultural? It wasn't like personal. It wasn't like the person himself or herself.
Yeah, not so much a conflict, more of a misunderstanding that went on for a long time. Okay. But I have experienced something like this, and it was here in the UK. Some time ago, I worked in this fairly small office, and I shared it with a work colleague, and I would usually be the first person in the office, so I would start off by, like, you know, switch the light on, open the window, because I like to let some fresh air in first thing. Mm-hmm. And then you're smiling. You might know something about that.
I have a feeling of where this is going.
Yeah.
Continue.
So right, and I you know, sometimes, and I didn't realize this until much later, but like sometimes he would make this comment like, oh, it's a bit chilly today, isn't it? And there was, you know, and I was always like, oh yeah, I guess it's, you know, it's colder than yesterday. Like, you know, I'd just respond to what I thought was just like a, you know, small talk kind of remark. And then I was mortified. It was actually someone else who pointed it to me also, who was, oh yeah, I should say that the guy was English. Yeah. And then someone else pointed out to me who wasn't English either, like, oh, you know, I think when he says that, he means like, I think he probably is cold and wants you to close the window. But that was like probably about 2 years after I first heard it from him.
Wow.
And then I was mortified, because then I realized that he's just being super polite. Like, he knows I like the window to be open a little bit. He knows I like fresh air. So if I open it, he doesn't want to just like straight up and close it, because he'll probably feel like he's being too direct or like rude. He probably didn't want to tell me to just like close it because he's cold, because he probably felt that would be rude towards me. And then I was like, oh my God, poor guy. And there I am, for 2 years, always just like completely blanking his polite remarks about how cold it is in the office. And then one day I just kind of said to him very, gently, I said, if, by the way, like, if you ever feel too hot or too cold and like you want to close the window, please just like feel free to do whatever, I'm happy with that. It's fine. And I think he was very relieved. And since then we had an understanding, and he never said anything. I still to this day don't know if, he thought it was deliberate from my side or not. And I guess I'll never know, but at least we cleared the air in the end.
Yeah.
So that can happen. It was just a case of like a cultural code of communication that it took me years, really years, before it sank in that, okay, this person is just, avoiding a certain directness that to them is rude. To me, it would be a completely natural thing to say that, I'd be happy to just say it, and I wouldn't think twice about it, So it really got me thinking about how easy it is, those kind of situations. That was funny, but it got me thinking about how easy it would be to, really grossly misunderstand someone, and could lead to something a lot more difficult to get out of, I guess.
I mean, definitely, like, this is something that is very, very common actually when it comes to, dealing with other cultures and stuff like that. Sometimes something that means something to you means totally different. And it sometimes feels, even if you're speaking the same language, it feels like you're speaking totally different languages. So, yeah. Okay. And this is the last question, which is, did any culture surprise you by how close it is to the Polish or the British culture?
I think, again, I have kind of two little things to say to this, because the first thing I'd say was the hospitality in the Balkan countries, and like Bosnia, Serbia, and Albania as well, Kosovo. I felt like the culture of hospitality is very much reminds me of Poland, and how people really open up their houses to you, and like make sure that really want, it's really important for them that you're comfortable, you're well fed. Food is a big thing.
Yes.
And I felt like in many of those places, I really felt like home. Like those people who hosted me may as well have been my very distant family. So that was really nice to feel in some of those places. But then also, and especially older people, older ladies, like the grandma. It's just, but I think it would be the same wherever I went. That there's a certain archetypal grandma that is in every culture, probably. And the other thing is, that's not so much how another culture is similar to Polish or British culture, but something that I keep noticing over and over again is how everybody has food in common and coffee a lot of the time as well. And it's and this is something that I really love about. I'm very lucky to have friends from all over here in the UK, and I just love those kind of interactions where you get someone from Iran, from China, from Germany, from Italy, from Poland, from the UK around the table, you put some dish on the table, you say a few words about it, and before you know it, everybody is excited about food, and you can be talking for hours. And this is something, like sharing a meal is something so, on a human level, it's just something so unifying that it doesn't, in a way, it's all about the fact that we're all from different places and can, share those very different, like, culinary tips and other stories. But at the same time, it just shows that, like, we're just all a bunch of foodies. So I love that as well, how, you can really feel at home just talking about something really simple like food and sharing a simple experience like sharing a meal. Yeah. So that's also those are also the moments when I feel like, oh, I could be at home now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing that I like to end with is to ask you if you have any advice to a person who is entering a new culture or is going to live in a new culture. What would you tell him or her?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I think, and I'm not going to say food because I've already mentioned it too much in this interview. Something that I found very useful was, and that was both when I first moved to the UK and also when I went traveling to like particular places where I knew I was going to spend more time in, culture and like music and songs. I find that it's really it really helps to understand the culture if you like try to maybe just engage a little bit with like what's going on in like even just pop music. I don't know, it just feels like if you know what's on the radio and what people are listening to every day and the kinds of lyrics and what the kinds of issues that people choose to sing about and stuff. I always found that because it's both on a linguistic level, you can really brush up on your language skills. I know that it really helped me. But also you get a little bit closer to that life over there. I don't know. It's obviously not the same. It will never be the same as just like, going out there and meeting people. But that can be difficult at the beginning, I think. It's great if you're brave enough to just like go out there and make some friends. That's amazing. But that can be a bit difficult at the beginning. So I always try to. Plus, if you go to cultural events or like concerts or gigs or even just like cinema or something, you can always meet people there, and it always makes it just that little bit easier to break the ice in a new place.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually great advice. Actually, like it kind of gives a very interesting insight because it is truly, it can be very difficult at the beginning, as you said, to just go out and like meet people. So it's interesting like to use like art and literature and stuff like that to kind of get closer to the culture and stuff like that. Okay. Well, that was it. I'm going to stop the recording.